Hi, everybody. I'm so very excited that we have Bonney Brown and Diane Blankenburg here with us today of Humane Network. And Humane Network is a lead sponsor of Fundraising Day. And we want to thank them very much for their sponsorship and also thank them for joining us today for this great event. And they're going to talk about end of the year fundraising, getting your paws on more money this year. Bonney Brown and Diane Blankenburg are co-founders, and together they lead Humane Network, a team of expert consultants that help organizations across the country to be more successful in a wide range of ways through a variety of affordable services. Bonney was the CEO, and Diane was the Development and Community Programs Director of Nevada Humane Society. They both worked for Best Friends Animal Society in key roles, and respectively, they have 30 and 20 years of experience in the field of animal welfare to draw upon to help organizations achieve their goals. And here they are presenting Getting Your Paws on More Money this year, end of year fundraising.
Thanks so much, Stacy. We're thrilled to be here and so glad to be here this afternoon with all of you. So today in this presentation, we're going to talk about 4 different things. The first one is about the opportunity for year-end fundraising, which is about your potential to raise funds between now and December 31st. We'll talk about what you should be sharing with your supporters over this period, and we'll share a few simple things you can do to increase your fundraising success. And lastly, we're going to share 8 specific effective fundraising themes and strategies that you can employ now between the end of the year. So I'm going to hand this off to my colleague Diane. We have a quick poll for you.
How do you feel about your organization's year-end fundraising plan? Do you have a solid fundraising strategy? Have a plan and feel okay about it? You don't have a plan or you're not sure, it's not applicable. Interesting, but not surprising. Only 20% have a plan at all. 74% they don't have a plan. So that is actually very consistent with our experiences with the clients we work with. So don't feel bad about that. And that's a great reason to be a part of this webinar today. So it's great to be here too, and just really excited about sharing our thoughts with you and how you can maximize your end of the year fundraising. This particular quote is one of my favorites. Richard Avanzino was the executive director of the San Francisco SPCA many years ago, also headed up Maddie's Fund for years. But I feel like his quote summarizes the whole fundraising process very succinctly. It's, do you do good work, tell people about it, and ask them for help. In spite of the pandemic and the holiday themes, the fundamentals are really basically the same, and as simple as this quote is. You really need to focus on the same approaches and the same strategies, but obviously the extra twists that we'll be talking about here shortly. It should be partly a product of the work that you've been doing throughout the year. And I know we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but some folks have a plan already that they've been working to, some do not. But either way, it is still the culmination of whatever you've been doing throughout the year. And it's also an opportunity presents itself after the first of the year to really get going on it, even if you don't have a plan this year, but to be putting together your ideas. It's not too soon in January to look at what you're going to do for the whole year and even planning the next end of the year of fundraising. The main thing you want to be sure, no matter what you do, that you always make it fun and focus on the positive so that your messaging is exciting and an emotional connection that will bring in the best results. The end of the year fundraising for nonprofits is really very similar to the sales in the retail industry, where the last part of the year is where the biggest return is. And as you can see from this quote, some organizations bring in as much as 50% of their donation income from end of year asks. So obviously, as I mentioned earlier, this is a really critical time to focus on maximizing these opportunities and being able to maximize the revenues that you would receive. The good news is it's never too late. And even if you do not have a plan, you can start the plan now for the end of this year. And as I said earlier, you can work on your plan in January for next year. The two largest online giving days of the year are listed here. It's Giving Tuesday, and this year it's on November 30th, and then December 31st, which is the last day of the year. December 26th through the 31st can be as high as 10% of the overall online giving for the entire year. And amazingly enough, lots of organizations do not take advantage of this. They do not focus on the end of the year. They don't do anything really any different, if at all. So it's really important to make sure you have a plan to maximize these important dates. As you can see here also that a lot of donors had planned or had planned and have hopefully been giving as much or more in 2021 as they did in 2020. And I know we've had from our consulting work a lot of clients who have suggested that, or at least communicated that they were nervous about doing any particular requests or asks for funds, especially they felt it was inappropriate because of all the things that are going on. But actually, most of the experts say this is still an amazing time, and that obviously based on these statistics here that people are still very much wanting to give, and sometimes they're wanting to give more just because things have been so tough, and for those that aren't in a tough place, they're able to help others, and it makes them feel good. But we're going to give you hopefully some very specific tips and suggestions that will help you determine how you can best take advantage of this end of the year fundraising. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Bonney.
So yeah, in just a moment, I'm going to talk about what you should be saying to your supporters. But first, we have a short poll for you to take.
Do you have a well-defined messaging strategy that will guide your communications with donors for your end-of-year fundraising? We know what we need to say to our supporters. We have a general idea. We don't really have a clear idea yet, and not sure or not applicable.
Stacy, I don't see the results, so maybe you could just summarize those briefly if
Certainly.
you don't mind.
No, my pleasure. Do you have a well-defined messaging strategy that will guide your communications with donors for your end-of-year fundraising? 17% say we know what we need to say to our supporters. 30% say we have a general idea. 39% say we don't have a really clear idea yet. And then 13% are not sure or not applicable. So it's sort of like 50% on the first two and a little over 50% on the second two.
All right, thank you. That's great. Good to know. So, what should you be saying to your supporters? The most important thing is to provide some really much needed good news. You want to share an uplifting story about an animal that your organization helped this year. It may be an animal that arrived at the shelter injured, or the story of a family that was able to keep their cat because of your pet food bank program, or perhaps it's a story of a rescued kitten that's now in foster care. So the most important thing is to provide some good news to people, something uplifting and positive. Remember that focusing on an individual animal is often the most impactful thing you can do for a donor. And sharing a story is especially important. And research shows that a story, especially one about an individual, is definitely going to increase the response, both rate and amount, that people give to your organization. So you want to be sure that your stories are clear and that they're concise. You don't want to go on, and that they have an emotional element, because it's really important to engage people with a story that is touching and an individual that they can identify with. So about the story piece, there's something important that goes along with it, and that's photos. It is truly crucial to have good photos to go along with your stories. So you want to be sure that these photographs are of an animal or a person with an animal. It's important that people are able to make a good connection to the animal's eyes in the photo, or that the photo be otherwise very touching. For example, something that really shows the human-animal bond. The photos really need to be crisp and clear, and you want to crop the photos to focus attention. It can be hard in a shelter or rescue environment to get great photos with a lot of stuff going on all around and sometimes a busy background. But if you crop the photo on the really important part, that will really help to focus people's attention. And it's also important to ensure that the photos are large enough to be emotionally impactful. So another key thing you want to be sure you're saying to people is thank you. It's really crucially important to contact people each time they give, and ideally with the thank you note. Of course, you want to honor that person's request. Maybe the person would only like to get, maybe the person would really only like to get an email thank you. But whatever it is, you definitely want to be sure you're reaching out to them after each time that they give. Many people report that they do not give again because they didn't get a thank you from the organization. And besides that, gratitude promotes warm feelings, and it's important in creating a climate for more giving. It's all about building relationships, and you really want to be sure that you are reaching out to donors each time they give to say thank you, and in a variety of different ways. It's also important to say thank you in your appeals and other communications with donors. You want to remind people that their giving is what's making life-saving possible. You want to remind them that they're creating joy and peace for animals, that they're bringing hope to animals and people who care about these animals, and it's all made possible through their generous support. That is really crucially important. And also keep in mind that the word you or your is powerful in any of your writing or your graphics, because it's a way to engage supporters. It immediately draws people's attention. So you also want to tell people about how they can help and what a difference it's going to make. Lots of people feel helpless in these crazy times that we live in, and so you can help making a really specific request. You want to let people know how they can help and how it's going to make a difference. So if you need a donation to cover medical care for an injured cat, or funds to provide veterinary care and special diet food, or spay neuter, you just want to be really specific. And that can even include the amount of money that you are trying to raise. People really want to know that their gift, whether it's monetary or volunteer time, is going to make a difference. And keep in mind that you're not imposing on people when you ask them to give. You're helping them by making it clear how they can help animals, and that will make them feel good. We all feel good when we give, and that is what you're enabling people to do when you ask them to support the work that your organization is doing for the animals. And just remember, it's so important to keep the focus on the donor and the animals, not so much on you or the organization.
Right. The supporter contacts that you have are your most valuable asset. And the reason for this is because if you have a list of donors and supporters, you can always raise funds. A lot of organizations, especially the smaller ones, do not have a specific donor database. And if that's true, that's fine. Just need to be able to be sure you get the information all into one place. But there are also some very inexpensive fundraising databases like Little Green Light, but even Excel spreadsheet can do in the beginning until you're large enough to need to put it into a database. and can afford to do so. Now, your adopters may not typically, if you have adopters, become large donors, but volunteers and clients that are using your services in other ways often can be. And volunteers can give up to twice as much as non-volunteers. So you want to be sure you're not missing out on including them in your ask. Now, I mentioned those two really important online giving days earlier, and the timing really truly does matter. And you want to be sure that in this also you're creating a sense of urgency. And there's a couple different ways of doing that. One is to set up a matching gift challenge with a specific deadline. You may have special donors or some of your Uber donors that might be willing to participate in this if you ask them, because not only is it giving them an opportunity to make sure that their dollar is going further, also everybody else that donates is going to feel better about it, knowing that their money has been matched. So another way to set up a sense of urgency is to do an end of the year, so-called last chance to give life-saving gift in 2021 type situation. You know, typically in the past, there's been a lot of benefits to for tax purposes of giving, and even though those have changed somewhat in recent years, there still is a benefit, and people are in the habit of doing that. So knowing that they only have a certain amount of time to get a gift into you and to help the organization can help them take action now. If it's a general ask, sometimes they just by nature might put it off until it's a better time, and that time may not ever come. So creating a sense of urgency definitely helps people to actually act now. So as I mentioned, matching gifts are just a great opportunity to not only encourage people to give now, but to help them understand how their money or how their donation can be doubled, as a matter of fact, as far as the matching gift side of it. And don't forget to reach out to your special donors that you think might be willing to engage in something like this. And I think often they're feel quite honored to be asked. So don't be afraid to ask and reach out. So along, Bonney talked about the photos and how important they are, and videos can be even more important as far as making that emotional connection and really telling your story in a even more compelling way. It's quite possible that your organization does not have somebody with this particular skill set, or you just may not have staff with enough time to be able to do that. But often, if you reach out to your volunteers, you're going to find somebody in your support group that has these kinds of skills and would be willing to donate for the cause. So again, don't hesitate to ask out. Of course, you want to stay engaged in the project, and I think it's always important for an organization to review anything that's going to go out to the public. And so maybe you can give them some guidelines on the kinds of things you'd like to include, and providing them with the stories and the photos, or the subject matter of the video, and then be sure to review it before it is actually published. So fundraising is really about building relationships, and a really good way to do this is by making sure that your emails are from an individual person. And I'm sure some of you, or many of you, already use something like MailChimp or some of the other applications that allow you to send out mass emails. But these applications usually have the ability, and I know MailChimp does, to customize it so that it looks like it's coming from an individual. You definitely certainly don't want to take the time to send out individual messages, and if you do it through email, you can end up with some spam problems if you try to email too many people. So we definitely recommend that you use something like MailChimp, and be sure that you use the function that allows you to customize who it's from.
So we have another quick poll here.
We'll wait for it to come up. There we go. It says, do you have a donor database or otherwise track donors and their preferences? We have a software program for donor contacts. We keep a spreadsheet of donor contacts or their document. We don't have our donor contacts organized, and we're not sure, it's not applicable.
So Diane, do you see it?
I do. And so let's see, we have 60% say they do have a software program for their donor contacts. Another 32% keep track of them somehow in a spreadsheet or other documentation. So what is that? That's about 50%, which is great. Unfortunately, there's still another 50% that doesn't have a good way to track or does not track their donor information at all. So super critical, but we'll talk more about that as we go through the slides. And then one more thing to help make it easy for people to give is to make sure your website is clear and easy and helpful in prompting people to give specific amounts as you would like them to. I have seen websites where you had to click on 3 or 4 different things in order to get to the place where you actually were going to give. So you want to make sure it is simple and easy and the page is not too complicated as far as figuring out how to do it. Another tip is to include, like you see in these samples here, some specific amounts that helps people, or prompts them, I should say, to give these specific amounts, and in some cases prompts them to give more than they might have given otherwise. And a really good way to test your website is not only to look at it yourself, including your staff, but to get somebody else that's maybe not in your organization that could potentially be representative of a donor, and have them step through it and give you feedback on how easy it was, or if things were confusing, or what they might suggest to make it even easier. All right, so now I'm going to turn it back over to Bonney, who's going to talk about some communication strategies for this time of year.
Right. So what should your efforts look like for the next 2 months? And one thing I want to comment on is how important direct mail still is. There are certainly some generational differences and personal preferences. And I don't know that you can always generalize, because many seniors are very active online. But it's important to remember that before most donors or people in general will do something, such as make a donation, they need to hear or see about your organization 7 different times before they're going to actually take action. So you want to cover as many different bases as you can. And while it would be great if you could do all of the things that are listed here, if you can't, don't let that stop you from doing something. Even if all you can do this year is an email campaign, then really focus on that and do a really great job. I will say though, if you can do direct mail, and costs for actual printing have come down in recent years, if you haven't looked at it in several years, it can be worthwhile and quite fruitful to begin engaging people that way too. So I'm going to talk briefly about the kinds of themes that you want to be using. And it is really important to create a theme or concept that will sort of unify your fundraising approaches for the holiday season. Now, of course, you could use multiple themes, but you still want to keep some consistency, and you want to be sure people know that it's from your organization. And above all, you want to be sure that whatever you choose to do, you keep it really fun and positive. So coming up, we are going to share with you 8 different themes or concepts that you can use, that have been used successfully by other organizations. You can adapt these for your organization, or you could, do a brainstorming session and maybe come up with a creative idea of your own. But you want to have, ideally, a couple of these concepts in place so that you can use them throughout November and December to maximize your holiday donations. So the first one is something Diane mentioned a couple of times already, and that is Giving Tuesday, and it's coming up on November 30th. There's a website listed here that you can take a look at, and they do provide some additional information there. And we have several samples here for you to take a look at of different campaigns from different organizations. And if you search online, you'll find still others that might help to inspire you. This one is an appeal for, or an ad, I should say, for Giving Tuesday, created by Best Friends Animal Society. And you can see that it has a lot of great qualities, including the animal, a great photo. You can really make a connection with these two animals. So you can use these and other things you find online as inspiration for your own Giving Tuesday promotion. What makes it really effective is if you begin promoting it to your supporters in advance of the day. And then you want to be sure you're reaching out on November 30th as well. So we have one other thing to share with you. It is a video from an organization here in Northern Nevada. It's one that they created last year, and we're going to share it with you, and we'll talk about it a bit on the other side.
This year, while the world was shut down, we had no choice but to keep going. Homeless pets still needed shelter, while pets in our community needed care. So we forged a new path. We switched to a virtual adoption process so that homeless pets could still find new families. We created a new system for our vaccine and microchip clinic to protect the lives of pets in our community. We continued treating homeless pets with medical needs and provided more affordable spay and neuter surgeries to the community. No matter what happened, we were determined to find a way, because pets and people still needed our help. Now we need your help. Donate between now and December 1st. And your gift will be matched dollar for dollar, doubling the impact you have on these precious lives. Because no matter what's happening in the world, they are still counting on us.
So on that video that we just saw, I think there were a lot of really great things in there. The music really supports the video, a lot of really great images that certainly inspire me to want to support this organization. But if I had one piece of advice, it would be to make sure that the name of the organization was really clear at the outset. Anyway, it's still a great video to look at, and maybe you can share it with others and create one of your own. So the second concept we want to talk about with you is called Lights of Love. You could name it anything you want, really, but the concept is a tribute donation campaign. So you create a lighting display either in your shelter or outdoors, and you couple it with a campaign where people make donations for lights in memory or in honor of a pet or a person. And if you do a really great job of this, it can become a gift that people give each year in honor of friends, pets, and relatives. So it can really become a powerful fundraising tool for you, and it gets easier the second, third, and fourth year that you do it, obviously. So this is something we can share a lot more about with you if you reach out to us. Diane and I have run several of these and would be very happy to send you more information. Just let us know. The third concept is the giving tree. And again, as you can see from the images here, there's lots of opportunity for variations on a theme. You see some of these are outside, some are inside, and they have different twists on them in terms of ornaments with gifts or simply asking people to donate specific items online. So it could be totally virtual if you wanted, or a combination. So it's a great theme, and it works very well for organizations that try it. And go search online and you'll find even others that will give you increased ideas for how you could implement the Giving Tree idea at your organization. The fourth suggestion we have is to create a series of emails for your supporters. These would be ideally something that you send out daily that recount the very best rescues of the year. You're also going to thank donors for their support that made these life-saving successes possible. And then you're going to ask for a donation. We have here a couple of images that groups have created for their email campaigns, and you can see that they're festive and appealing. And of course, you want to think of a theme or a name for you. You can see one group here is calling it Stray Rescues 12 Dogs of Christmas, but people have called it all kinds of things like the 12 Saves of Christmas, Hanukkah and Kwanzaa, or you could just be celebrating the top rescues of 2021. And we have here for you some additional themes from other shelters, and you can see that they range from humorous to more traditional and, trying to touch on that season of giving feeling that people have with the images that they have selected. So whatever you do, you want to create a specific sort of masthead for each of your emails so that every day when these arrive in people's email boxes, they know what they're getting. And you can also share these same stories on social media and really expand your audience for the your 12 saves or whatever campaign you do. So our next suggestion is a holiday pet photo contest hosted online. GoGo Photo is a great platform. I think that there are also others, but it's one that we've used and it's quite user-friendly, and several groups we know of have had really good success with it. The site steps you through how to set it up, and basically people are paying a small fee to post the photo of their pet, and then other people are voting on it, generally for about $1 a vote. The platform really helps facilitate all of that. You want to think about something that you'll do with the photos when they're done. It could be that you're going to feature them on your social media page or your website, or that you're going to create a calendar or a mural. Among the groups we know of who've done this, a clinic in Ohio that we've worked with raised $18,000. A group we know of in Florida raised over $55,000. And we did this recently for a startup clinic that didn't really have a large donor base to begin with and raised $24,000. So it can be effective. And another concept you want to think about is Home for the Holidays. This is an adoption campaign that's been going on for a very long time. It's sponsored by Helen Woodward Animal Center, but the really cool thing about it is that it can easily double as a fundraising theme for your organization. Everyone has heard the song Home for the Holidays, and the concept fits so well with finding homes for pets that it can work quite well for your organization. And another great concept that works really well is a thankathon. And this is one that can easily be layered in with the other concepts that we've talked about. So perhaps you see this and think that calling all the donors is really not your thing, but maybe you can enlist help of board members or even volunteers to help with calling and thanking supporters for their gifts over the past year. And you're just thanking them. You're not asking them for more money, so this makes it a lot easier to get people who are willing to make the calls. And if you time these calls before your holiday appeal arrives in the mail, or just following up on an email appeal that you sent out, for example, it can really help to bolster that effort. Thanking people makes them feel appreciated, and it really puts them in the mood to give more. So keep that in mind. And this can also be a great way to start a high donor program for your organization. And this is essentially how it's done. You start by calling people and getting to know them and having an ongoing conversation over time. But right now for the holidays, just focus on the Thankathon concept and getting board members or volunteers or perhaps even yourself to call donors and just thank them for making all of the life-saving possible over the past year. And the last one we want to share with you is a concept that takes advantage of those final days of the year from December 26th through the 31st, which, as Diane shared with you, is a really fruitful time for fundraising. So you want to be sure that you're reaching out to your supporters on those days, and especially on the 31st. And one theme that works well for this is the clock is ticking concept, and you can even put a countdown clock on your website, inviting people to make a life-saving gift before the end of the year, and how that will really help your organization in the year ahead. So this can be a very powerful concept to reach out to your supporters, and again, works with email blasts, but also through social media. Last poll for you. Stacy is going to put that up, and as you look at it, you can let us know if you think you might try one or more of these ideas this year. Yes, you'll probably try 2 or more of them. Yes, you'll probably try 1. No, probably not, or you're just not sure, or it's probably not applicable to you. So let us know.
Right. So it says, do you think you might try 1 or more of these ideas this year? 55% say yes, probably 2 or more. 45% say yes, we will try 1, and then we have 0 folks saying no or probably not, and 0 not sure, not applicable. So this is great.
Yeah, that's great.
So in closing, I'd like to talk a little bit about the fact that fundraising is often not everyone's favorite thing to do, to have to ask for money. But I think if we look at it from the perspective of this quote, where fundraising is the gentle art of teaching the joy of giving, we are really just helping people do something they want to do and helping them guide that and helping them feel good. So it doesn't have to be so intimidating. But on the other hand, too, there just may be certain staff or certain volunteers that may be better fit for this or have the right personality and actually enjoy it more. So don't feel like you need to be intimidated. But we hope that, one of these ideas, or maybe several of these ideas, inspires you and gives you a chance to bring in more funds for your organization the last 2 months of the year. And whatever way you decide to raise your funds, you are really just there to ask people to help for the animals in a way that they already want to do, just giving them the specifics of how to do that. That there's people in your community that care and deeply about animals, just like you and your organization does. So you're just helping them facilitate that act of putting their caring into motion. As we talked about in the very beginning, this quote, simple but profound, from Richard Avanzino, is to do good work, tell people about it, and then ask for help. All you need to do truly is to reach out and ask. Everybody is doing great work. Some people are telling others about it, and many are not asking at all, especially at this crucial time where you can maximize your donations for your cause specifically and for the animals of your community. So we want to thank you for joining us. We really appreciate your listening to us. And as Bonney mentioned earlier, if there's any of the ideas that we presented here that you would like more information on, this info, email address, and phone number actually come directly to me. And we're more than glad to send you samples and templates and give you just some even personal guidance if it's needed. So thank you so much.
We've got some questions coming in here. Of course, I want to ask the question, and I think I know many people that are out in the virtual audience, and so we have folks that are representing foster-based organizations, shelters, spay-neuter clinics, pet food banks, or pet food bank only organizations. how do you approach fundraising? Do you approach it differently from each category? I mean, with you're involved with fundraising for a spay neuter clinic now, but yet when you were with Nevada Humane Society, it was a very different kind of organization. But is the ask different?
Diane, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's the concepts to me are not different. And yes, you're right. We actually are fundraising for our own full service clinic. We've worked with a lot of spay neuter clinics. We've worked with rescue groups and organizations that have shelters. So I don't really think the concepts are different. You know, it's a little more challenging sometimes depending on what the mission of the organization is, but there's always stories. And that's really what all of your fundraising centers around, is finding those stories. And even with spay neuter clinics, you still have animal stories. So sometimes you have to be a little more creative, but you just have to have some way to collect those stories, get great photos, and really make that emotional connection. And if any of you are, trying to apply these things to a situation that is a little bit different, again, we're more than happy to help you specifically look at how you could apply them to your organization.
Bonnie, do you have anything you want to add?
No, that was good.
So I'm going to just share, because I got in the mail your letter, and it's beautiful, for your clinic fundraising letter. So I keep all these things in a pile because I'm looking at them. And this is very, very colorful, glossy. Is this intent? I mean, I've seen fundraising letters that are black and white. So to color, to not color, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, if you can color, I would do it. The goal is to create an emotional response in the recipient, right? So they need to be able to bond with, most often, an animal, and sometimes it's a person and an animal, but really most donors, they really love animals. So you want to highlight animals, and good photos that show the animal and allow people to make that bond. If you can see the animal's eyes, it really helps. But like in that letter you just showed, Stacy, the little dog has goggles on, and when you read the story, you learn why he's wearing goggles. And the cat story is on the flip side. We tried to do both cats and dogs because we serve cats and dogs. So if you do, I think it's good to include one of each. But if your organization only serves cats, it could work really well to focus on one cat. And we work with some cat organizations that we help with their appeals. And it's incredibly impactful if you get just a few good photos. And yes, color is worth the money. And a return response envelope or response card and envelope, depending on the format you use, is really important, because just with the websites, you want to suggest giving amounts and you want to make it as easy as possible.
Right. So here's the envelope that you put in there with it, and it has all the choices on the inside, and it's a small little envelope. Just, that's easy for folks to slip their check in here. And then on here, I would assume there's ways to give. You go to the website if you want to give, obviously, without sending in a check. So that's that. So excellent information.
And we also are doing email communications along with that, Stacy. So
okay, so you'll set up like a e-blast also saying give today for Meow and Casey for the same stories.
That works really well, actually, to do that. Yes, you can do that and time it maybe shortly after people would have received the print version, because there are some generational differences in terms of what people prefer, but you can't totally generalize, because many seniors are really into social media, and occasionally there are just people who prefer the paper. You can over time learn what donors prefer and note that in your software, like even a simple program like Little Green Light, which is pretty inexpensive, can help you do that. And then over time, you customize what your donors like.
And if I can jump, oh, sorry.
Go right ahead. No, go ahead, Diane.
I just wanted to comment on the outside envelope too, because if like you said, some people don't read their mail at all, but those of us that do look at our mail, they may not be as inclined to open it anyway if it looks like, you know, junk mail or maybe solicitation that they don't want. But so obviously it really doesn't matter if the person never opens it. So also you'll notice on there, Stacy, and for the others' benefit, we put the photos of the same 2 stories with a little blurb on the front. So that gets people's attention and hopefully makes it stand out from all the other mail. Sometimes, you know, that's in black and white. Sometimes we've done it in color, which can even be better. And I think with color, it used to be color was so, it is more expensive, but it used to be grossly more expensive. And it isn't as much of a markup as it has been in the past. So I would recommend that you at least get quotes both ways and just see what the difference is on color for the inside and the outside.
I also noticed, well, you sent it pre-sorted first-class mail, so it, I think, a little bit faster boat than the regular bulk rate. Or
Yeah,
not?
and yes, and you can work with them.
Oops, we lost you, Bonney.
Mailing house, the cost isn't as high as people often imagine.
Yeah, I don't know. We lost you somewhat, but she's talking about you can work with, there's lots of mailing houses that will work with you. And there's a lot of them that will give nonprofit discounts too. We're working with one right now that actually the woman, one of the women that works there is donating her time to actually do the layout. And then in addition, you can get discounts for the actual mailing, and they do the sorting and the verifying that they're legitimate addresses and all of that. So then, you know, you can be sure you're not wasting your money sending it to bad addresses.
Is it 250 sort of at the point where you go to a mailing house, or what's the number of names and addresses that you would start going to a mailing house?
I think that's not a bad guideline, Stacy. Yeah.
I mean, personally, we've always done ones that were more than that, but I would just get quotes, you know, and see what it is and see if it's worth it to you too.
I have a question.
Back in the day in Massachusetts, when I was starting a small organization, we do one night where we got together and stuffed the envelopes with the appeal letters and stuck the little stamps on them and sent them out. So it's possible to do it on a really small scale, but you really want to get started doing something if you possibly can.
This person has a question. Many of her donors give after they've been helped with trap, neuter, return, sometimes subsidizing surgeries. Is it recommended to ask them in the future again, even though I know they really don't have a lot of money?
Yes, it is appropriate. This is the, you know, I think we're actually helping people feel good, because it feels good to give for most people. You know, when you give someone a gift, it's nice that they're happy, but we feel good giving. And everyone is like that. And so you're giving people an opportunity to feel good. And that's where the thanking comes in and is so important. And, you know, I always used to send, when I ran Nevada Humane Society, we sent a little old lady came in with a paper bag with 6 cans of cat food in it, or we got a crumpled dollar bill. We thank that person because that gift could be a bigger sacrifice for that person than for someone to write you a $10,000 check. So the graciousness and thanking, and you know, also you just never know. You could be the only organization that thanks them, and then you in their will and you get a property or money that this person's been squirreling away. That's not really the motivation behind it, in my opinion. The main motivation is because we are trying to encourage people to be more charitable and to be more giving to animal cause. The best way is gratitude, and to show gratitude takes a little bit of effort, but it's more than helping our organizations. It's really a bigger cause of creating a better world where people give and feel connected to each other and to the causes that they care about.
And I also think it's important, though, if somebody says they don't want to receive a specific, like an e-blast, your e-blast, or they don't want your mailer, that you track those some way. If you have a database, there's usually easy ways to do it there, so you're not annoying them if they don't want it. But for the most part, too, they just, even if they don't give, they enjoy the stories.
Yeah,
What
and
about,
you can.
sorry.
Oh, sorry, Stacey, just one more quick thing. Even if they say, I don't want a written thank you sent to me in the mail, you can pick up the phone, you can send them an email thank you, even if they say they don't need to be thanked. We all like to be thanked, and it's worth it. Sorry, go ahead.
We have a question out there. What about putting in things in your mailings like return labels or greeting cards or the little notepad? I have a lot of notepads. What are your thoughts on those kinds of perks?
Okay, well, generally, I think that they can add a lot of cost to your mailing. I will tell you, experts say they work really, really well. Most of the groups we work with don't have the resources to invest in it. If we were working with a group that did, I would probably have them start testing it. The great thing about direct mail, test things, you can do smaller, get very sophisticated, and you can check how response is to different things that you send out. So, I do think that it can work on some level, but I think you'd have to customize it carefully to your organization. Diane, do you have a feeling about that? Or maybe Stacey,
Yeah,
you do too.
Yeah, I think that I agree with you. The smaller organizations, I know when I was responsible for this part of our life at Nevada Humane Society as far as sending out the appeals, and I remember getting a call with somebody that was very annoyed with us for sending them a calendar, but our organization was Nevada Humane Society, so they had gotten something from the Humane Society of the United States and attributed it to us, and they felt it was a waste of money, and why would we do that? Of course, we hadn't done it. But on the other hand, you do have to kind of weigh it's a balancing act of looking like you're spending more money on the mailing than and where people might want that to go to the animals versus versus being attractive to them and motivating them to give more. So I don't really think there is a hard and fast rule, but certainly the smaller the organization, the harder it is to afford it, but also the image may not be as good for you either.
Yeah, the organizations that do it, the thinking behind it is really almost guilting you into giving. So they give you something so that you will give something out of a feeling of guilt almost. But
Yeah, it's funny for me. I don't feel like I need to donate to those organizations, even though I'm using their stickers and their notepads. In a way, I feel like, well, if they've got the money, I don't really need to send them that money. And also, there's an organization called Smile Train that I donated to probably like 8 years ago, and they've still put me on their list. And they always send their reply envelope has a first class stamp on it. And so, I'm always putting stickers on it and using the stamp, to like mail out my utility bill or whatever the bill. There's somebody who I have to write a check to because they don't do online yet around here up in Vermont. So I'm like using their envelope because I'm so cheap on that stamp, and I'm feeling bad how many stamps are getting thrown in the trash, that aren't getting used. And I know some organizations have sent nickels, and pennies in their mailers. I mean, it just is amazing, sort of the different thoughts. If I was going to spend resources, I guess I'd spend more of my resources on buying a mailing list than a notepad.
yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice, Stacey.
Yeah. All right. I think we are I've covered most of the calls of the questions. Of course, I always have more questions, but that's just I would love to know more about like Little Green Light and the different types of software, organizations should use, because I think we should have a goal to move away from the spreadsheets. But, maybe that's another thing at that 250 point, you might want to think to move into like a Little Green Light or Bloomerang. And I know people have different opinions about those different software packages and how to use those. But I think we've covered most of them. Thank you so much. This is incredible. And I'm GoGo Pet Photo. I've always wanted to use, and I can't believe you raised $24,000. Now it's going to go at the top of my list of one of these 8 tips. I think I'm going to do a GoGo photo this fall for one of the many organizations I'm involved with.
Oh, that's great. Glad to hear it.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Great presentation. So everybody, it is now about 12:45 Eastern time, which is our lunch break for online fundraising day. So we are going to go on a lunch break for about 40